Three true night stalker and night shift horror stories. The wind blew sharp through Elmswood, a quiet town nestled at the base of the Nevada mountains. It was 3:17 a.m. when Ivy saw him for the first time, standing under a flickering street lamp near the old ranger station, completely still. His face was pale, stretched thin over sharp features, eyes glowing red, a grin too wide to be human. Ivy, 23, had just joined a research expedition deep in the Hollow Pines Reserve, a remote, off-map forest known for its unnatural silence and odd disappearances. Alongside her were Mason, a seasoned field medic with a calm edge, Eliza, a plant researcher whose silence often said more than her words, and Carter, the group's security guide with a sharp gaze and skeptical mind. Their mission was simple: 1 week to collect data on nocturnal wildlife patterns, no cell service, no rescue if things went wrong. By the second night, Ivy noticed the forest wasn't just quiet, it was watching. The usual sounds of crickets and rustling leaves vanished after midnight. That's when the laughter began. Low and raspy, not loud, but close enough to freeze the blood. Ivy stood outside her tent, flashlight trembling in her hand. In the distance, beyond the tree line, two glowing red eyes blinked at her, then a grin. It vanished before she could react. Carter brushed it off. Probably a bear, he said, or an illusion. But Ivy knew better. Mason grew uneasy. He'd found claw marks near their gear, too large, too symmetrical. Eliza, on the other hand, changed. She'd sit by the fire long after it burned out, drawing symbols in the dirt. By night 4, she stopped responding to her name, whispering something over and over. A name they hadn't spoken aloud: Varric. That same night, Ivy woke to find Eliza's tent empty. No signs of a struggle. Just an old pine branch, placed where her pillow had been. Ivy and Mason searched the woods. They found no trail. Carter returned from a solo check with a pale face, refusing to speak. His hands trembled when he handed Ivy a piece of bark with deep scratches spelling out, "He's listening." They wanted to leave, but the trails looped, leading them in circles. The forest shifted. Trees they marked were gone the next day. Ivy saw him again, behind Carter this time, horned, with black tangled hair and a beard like dried moss. His smile opened far too wide, showing jagged, inhuman teeth. Carter didn't see him, but Ivy did. That night, Carter vanished. Only his flashlight was found, still on, pointed at nothing. Ivy and Mason were all that remained. They tried to stick together, but Ivy woke alone on the 6th day. Mason's boots were at the entrance of her tent, but he was gone. No sound, no struggle, just that feeling, like the trees were breathing. She ran, hours through twisted paths, the forest narrowing around her like a throat. The ranger station appeared out of the fog just before sunrise, empty, cold. On the floor, a single page from Eliza's journal. He waits for the one who sees. The forest is not haunted, it's alive. Authorities found Ivy a day later. She was dehydrated, her memory fragmented. She never spoke of what really happened. Just one warning: never follow the laughter. The rain hit the cabin roof like tapping fingers. It was 2:12 a.m., and Ivy had just lit the last candle when she heard the voice again. Low, guttural, too close to be outside. From the edge of the broken window, red eyes peered in, unblinking. That grin followed. 3 days had passed since Carter vanished. Ivy and Mason barricaded themselves in the ranger station they stumbled upon during their aimless retreat. The forest had twisted around them. Maps were useless. Compass needles spun like they were mocking logic. Ivy hadn't slept. Mason barely spoke. Varric was no longer a shadow. He was real, everywhere. Ivy saw him standing at the tree line, watching. Mason heard him breathing just inches from his ear during the night. Once, they both saw his reflection in the glass, but no one stood behind them. The night brought no peace. Ivy jolted awake to find her tent filled with whispers. Not words, just the sound of 1,000 mouths moving. She lit a flare. Nothing, just trees and silence. Then movement. Varric stood beyond the firelight, taller than she remembered. His antlers scraped the canopy. His smile stretched impossibly wide. He raised one finger and pointed at her. Eliza's voice echoed through the air, but she was gone. The sound came from behind Varric, a soft plea for help. Ivy stepped forward before Mason grabbed her arm and dragged her back. Her legs didn't want to move. Something in the air whispered, "Stay." By morning, Mason's eyes were bloodshot. He had carved circles around the windows and muttered verses in languages he didn't know. Ivy watched as he became something less human each hour. still fighting, but losing. She read Eliza's journal over and over. The entries got stranger, symbols, drawings, patterns repeating across pages. One phrase circled in ink, "Don't let him speak your name." That night, the cabin grew colder than the air outside. Ivy turned and saw Varric in the hallway. This time he didn't vanish. He stood at the end of the corridor, his beard tangled with moss and rot, his horns now cracked with a sickening glow. He tilted his head. Ivy didn't run, she stared. Mason entered behind her, knife in hand. The lights exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. Screaming. Ivy's. Mason's. But not in pain. They were calling to each other, lost in the pitch black. Varric whispered their names, low and slow like tasting the sound. When light returned, Ivy was alone. Mason's clothes were in a neat pile by the door. On top was a pine cone, fresh, still wet. Panic became dull. Ivy wandered. The forest changed again, trees tighter, sky darker, no wind, no birds, just him. He walked behind her, never touching, but always there. Once she tripped, and when she looked up, he was crouching beside her, grinning, his face inches away. She didn't scream. She couldn't. The final encounter came without warning. Ivy found herself in the clearing where their expedition first set camp. Empty now. But something was burning, one of their tents. Inside it, a journal, not Eliza's, her own. Pages she never wrote, describing every choice, every fear, every thought. The last page was blank, except for a single question. "Will you stay?" Ivy turned. Varric stood just outside the light, silent, waiting. Then a voice, "Mason's?" "Carter's," called from behind her. She turned again. No one. She closed the journal, threw it into the flames. She walked into the woods without looking back. Weeks later, a rescue team found the ranger station. Inside was a message scrawled into the wall. "He is patient. He is kind. He is waiting." They never found Ivy. But the forest still echoes with laughter when the moon is thin. Those who listen too long forget the way out. It was 3:47 a.m. Fog hugged the treetops of the Appalachian backwoods like a thick, suffocating blanket. Eliza stood barefoot at the edge of an abandoned firewatch tower, staring at the shadow climbing its rusted steps. Antlers first, then the grin. She should have been dead. After the last encounter, Ivy disappeared without a trace. Mason was presumed lost. Yet Eliza emerged days later, wandering along Route 321, speaking in riddles and holding a burnt pine cone. No one believed her at first, until she returned to the forest with a new team. This time, she brought Lucien, a skeptical cryptologist from Vermont, and Harper, a botanist with a steel composure masking recent grief. They came under the pretense of research. But Eliza knew the truth. They were bait. Varric had followed her back. He always did. The tower was their base. It groaned under its own weight. Each night, the radios sparked with static laced with whispers. Lucien tried decoding them. Every night, the same voice repeated a phrase that chilled the bones. "You've seen me before." By day, Varric left signs, trees stripped of bark in perfect spirals, strange fungi in the shape of human teeth. A single red feather laid on Harper's pillow. She didn't sleep after that. Neither did Eliza. Lucien was the first to break. Not loudly, quietly. He stopped speaking and began carving symbols on the window glass with his nails. When they tried to stop him, he hissed a sound not meant for human throats. That night, Eliza and Harper found him standing in the clearing, staring at the sky. His eyes were empty. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Varric stood behind him, hands resting on his shoulders like a father proud of a broken son. Eliza pulled Harper back. Lucien walked forward into the dark, never looking back. Inside the tower, time collapsed. The clock spun. Days bled into one another. They heard footsteps on the roof, knocks from beneath the floor. Sometimes, the elevator descended on its own, doors opening to a void of trees. Harper found a bundle of her own hair tied in a knot on her bed. The tension turned into madness. They couldn't trust mirrors. They couldn't trust each other. Eliza admitted she still heard Ivy's voice. She dreamed of her face every night, frozen in silent terror. Harper began sketching Varric's face over and over, each one more distorted. Then came the storm. Thunder cracked the sky open. The tower shook. Varric climbed again, slowly, deliberately. They barricaded the door. It didn't matter. He was already inside. The final confrontation came without time to plan. Varric stood in the center of the control room, arms outstretched. He smiled at Harper, then turned to Eliza. He whispered her name. She covered her ears, screamed, but it echoed inside her skull. Her nose bled. Harper lunged at him with nothing but a flare. He didn't move. He let her touch him. She collapsed to the floor, unmoving. Not dead, worse. Empty. Eliza turned to the window and jumped, but she didn't fall. She landed in darkness. The forest stood still. Varric was there. Closer than breath, he didn't speak, he only watched. Then Ivy's voice came again from behind her. Not all of us leave. Eliza ran. Branches tore at her. Voices surrounded her. Not threatening, pleading. She reached a clearing. There stood a massive stone carved with names. Her own was the last one. Beneath it a line, when you forget who you are, he remembers. The storm passed. Morning came. Rangers found the tower empty. No blood, no signs of struggle, just a drawing carved into the desk, Varric, smiling, and next to it another name newly added, Harper. The final message scratched into the elevator wall read, "We are not lost. We are chosen." And from deep in the woods on certain nights, those who dare to listen say they hear soft laughter and the sound of antlers scraping bark. The hospital lights flickered at exactly 2:11 a.m. The silence was too heavy for a place that should be full of life. In room 407, Eliza's heart monitor beeped steadily, but her eyes were wide open, unblinking, staring at something no one else could see. They brought her back to civilization. At least that's what they thought. Doctors said she was stable, but Harper was gone. Lucien too. The forest hadn't just taken them. It had buried pieces of itself inside Eliza, and through her, Varric remained. He first appeared again during group therapy. A low hum began in the fluorescent lights, growing louder until the bulbs shattered. Patients screamed. Eliza just smiled faintly. She whispered a name, and a nurse fainted without cause. That night, security footage caught a tall shadow standing by Eliza's bed. Antlers. No eyes. No face. The footage corrupted seconds later. Meanwhile, 3 others joined the investigation. Riley, a hardened detective who once tracked serial disappearances near the Appalachian line. June, a forensic linguist who recognized the symbols Eliza carved on her walls. And Noah, Harper's brother, a firefighter who hadn't spoken since her body was never found. He came with one purpose, bring her back or burn the forest down. They didn't believe in monsters. Not yet. They tracked the symbols to a forgotten part of the woods, marked on no official maps. Locals refused to speak of it. One man spat blood when asked. Another scratched his skin until he bled, repeating the word hollow over and over. Deep in the woods, they found the first sign. A tree trunk hollowed from within, filled with teeth, human, animal, unidentifiable. June recorded notes until she saw the symbols glowing faintly. She vomited and bled from her nose. Noah grabbed her as Riley kept watch, gun ready. Then came the sound, not footsteps, not wind. A scraping, like bone against bark. They turned, just trees, just fog. But Varric had already marked them. June dreamt of drowning in roots. Riley saw his dead brother outside his tent. Noah found Harper's bracelet braided into his bootlace, all things they had not brought. June begged to turn back. Riley refused. Noah loaded his rifle with salt rounds. They found a chapel. Wooden, crooked, sunk into the ground like it was trying to hide. Inside, rows of pews faced a mirror instead of an altar. The reflection showed only Varric, standing alone, smiling. Then the glass cracked. Noah yelled for them to run. Something moved behind the pews, not footsteps, crawling, fast. Riley opened fire. The bullets passed through fog and hit nothing. June fell. Varric grabbed her by the face, whispered something, then vanished. She was never the same again. That night, they hid in an abandoned ranger station. Riley kept watch. Noah held June, who whispered backwards words and clawed at her throat. He saw Harper outside, not moving, staring. She mouthed, "Don't follow." He did. Outside, she walked between trees with jerking movements, like a marionette. Her voice came from behind him, though her mouth never moved. Varric's face slowly emerged from behind her shoulder, eyes hollow, antlers spread wide, nearly touching the trees. Noah screamed. The next morning, Riley found Noah lying in a ring of burnt leaves, his mouth sewn shut. June had vanished. Only Eliza remained, still in room 407, still staring. The final scene unfolded there. Riley returned alone. He brought Eliza's drawings. He demanded answers. She didn't blink. She whispered a single phrase. "He's inside you now." Then the alarms triggered. Lights flickered again. The room went dark. Security footage once again cut out. Screams echoed down the hallway. When order was restored, the room was empty. Just a smear of ash. And a drawing of 3 figures in the woods. One was Varric, one was Eliza, The third wore Riley's jacket. Outside the hospital, the wind carried a whisper only few would notice. We're not coming back. We never left. And deep in the forest, the chapel stands taller now. The mirror is whole again, but this time it reflects nothing, only silence. Fog settled over the lake at 3:47 a.m. A girl stood at the edge, shivering barefoot in her hospital gown. Behind her, the forest loomed black and wide. Something moved between the trees, not walking, gliding, watching. Her name was Elise, the last survivor from Unit 12. She had escaped the facility 3 nights ago, but only her body had made it out. Varric had followed. Now she stared into the water, whispering to her reflection. It whispered back. Detective Cole arrived at the lake with a team of 3. Mason, ex-military, Leah, a trauma nurse with a past she refused to share, and Aina, Elise's sister. Each had a reason for returning. None knew Varric waited for them. The first sign came quick. Their tent was slashed open from the inside. No one had touched it. Leah found her boots filled with soil and bone. Mason heard laughter beneath the ground. Aina woke up with a carving on her arm, not cut, etched. Varric was circling. That night Elise vanished. They found her tracks leading into the water, but no splash, just footprints that stopped at the edge. Anna wept, but Cole noticed something else. The reflection of Elise remained in the lake long after she had gone. It blinked. They pressed on, into the forest where maps failed and signals died. Mason stepped on a child's doll with no face. Leah saw a line of birds flying backwards. Aina followed a voice calling her name in perfect mimicry. It was not Elise. Varric made himself known that night. They set camp by a fallen church. Roof collapsed, walls eaten by moss. As Cole kept watch, he saw Elise standing near the tree line. Still, eyes black, mouth moving silently. Then the tree behind her split open. Something emerged, not walking, crawling, wearing a human skin over something ancient. Mason tried to shoot. The bullets hit something but passed through. Leah screamed as her hands twisted backward. Varric stepped between them, his antlers scraping the branches above. His voice was not one voice. It was many, crying, pleading, laughing. He said Anna's name. They ran. Leah stumbled, dragging her leg. Mason carried her, but her eyes were wrong now, glassy, whispering backwards. Cole led them to a shack they had seen earlier, barricaded the door. But the shack was a trap. Inside were drawings, hundreds, all of them Varric, and Elise. Sometimes Elise as him, sometimes him inside Elise. In one corner, Anna found a mirror. In it she saw her team sleeping around her, but in the reflection they were all already dead. In the final moment, Varric appeared inside the room, without sound, just a breath colder than snow. Leah reached for a weapon, but her arm dislocated on its own. Mason began reciting prayers he didn't know he remembered. Cole stood still. Anna was the only one who spoke. She asked what it wanted. Varric pointed at the mirror. Anna saw herself smile. Then Varric stepped into the reflection and was gone. The others screamed, but no sound came. Outside, the lake rippled once, then calmed.